Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 141 of the Stomp the Bus Show. I'm your host, Mark Harris. Coming at you solo this episode. We're supposed to have a guest that kind of fell through. We'll have someone on in the next few shows, so that should change things up a bit. But just going to be a shorter episode today. I touched on a lot of the big picture stuff, like the ASU London game versus Kansas, and the new announcements about the facilities upgrades. I touched on that last episode. So if you want to hear about that stuff, that'll be in the TCU recap episode. This is more just this. It's going to be a shorter episode because it's just going to be about the Utah game. So obviously, huge game. And before I get into it, please like and subscribe on YouTube, rate and review on your podcast platform of choice, and always remember to follow the College Huddle Podcast Network. They do great work. All right. Anyway, back to ASU. Number 21 ASU at Utah. The ranking does not make ASU a favorite. According to ESPN Bet, they are minus 5.5, or Utah is a 5.5 point favorite. And so ASU is decidedly an underdog in this game. That feels about right. They probably should be an underdog considering it's a night game at Utah. 2 4-1 teams, both with different types of losses, right? Like Utah lost at home to Texas Tech, while ASU lost a very close game at Mississippi State. So either way, both come in at 4-1. Both have shown some high level play, right? Like it hasn't been like both of these teams have just looked horrible and you're like, how did they get to 5-1? Like not to say Houston is horrible, but Houston, they're 4-1 too, but that felt much less legitimate than ASU, and Utah's 4-1, and so this is going to be a huge game for Big 12, tiebreakers and all that, right? Like whoever wins this game is going to feel so much better about the rest of their Big 12 tasks, right? But Big 12 games that they have ahead of them. For ASU, if you get this win, you go to 3-0, and you have Texas Tech coming in. Like, I think it's fair to say that Texas Tech is the clear favorite and the clear best team in the Big 12 right now. I don't think there's any debate about that. So for ASU, like if you get this win, you beat Utah, you get to 3-0. No matter how it looks, you win a 16-13 defensive affair. You win 31-28 in a back and forth, whatever it is. You get to 3-1, or 3-0 in the Big 12. You already have a tiebreaker over TCU, Baylor, and now Utah. And then the Texas Tech game becomes a little less life or death. Let me put it that way, because it's still a huge opportunity. Win or lose, the Texas Tech game is still a huge game for ASU and a huge opportunity. But if you beat Utah, then the negative of losing to them, to the Red Raiders, is less of a thing because it would just be their first conference loss. So there's that. For Utah, they just righted the ship 2 weeks ago on the road at West Virginia, completely destroyed the Mountaineers, but they still have that conference loss to Texas Tech. If Utah were to beat ASU, they would be 2-1 with the Holy War coming up the following week. I believe they're on the road at BYU. So for Utah, this is an enormous game to stay in the race and show people that, we lost to Texas Tech, but we can beat everyone else type of deal. So Yeah, I feel good about ASU in this game. That's what I will say. After what at the TCU game, despite its unevenness, the fact that it was Levitt's best game. Tyson was still involved in a big way. Rayleigh Brown continued to really make hay, in the middle of the field and in between the 20s. And I mean, he finished with what, like 130 rushing yards, right? Like he was really good in that game against TCU. And then the defense, obviously, just having a fantastic game. You have the 2 picks, you have 6 sacks, you have holding them to like 0 rushing yards. It was just they got a little early on in that game and then tightened up for the last 40 minutes of play time. So or of regulation, I should say. So on those things, like it's kind of like the defense is really starting to come together. And with the offense, like I said, Levitt had his best game. You also saw more guys get involved. You saw our first deep completion to Jaron Hamilton. Malik McClain, a little bit more involved. I mean, he drew the huge PI. So Eusebio, and then the running backs, and then you get the tight ends involved a bit more too. Like ASU, I don't think this won't be a game A where they can fall behind like that. There's just no chance of that, right? Like if they're down, if they fall down 14-0 in the first half and they get the ball after halftime, then that's doable. Anything beyond 50, anything beyond a 2-score game, right? So if it's 17-0 again, I just don't see that. It's a lot to overcome. So they'll have to be on point with that. Obviously both teams are equally rested. I think. Well, actually, ASU has one more day of rest because they played on Friday night. So who knows? Maybe that'll play a big role. We do know that Jalen Moss is returning. That was reported this week. I don't know what to make of. It's great that there's another in what seems to be important wide receiver returning for this team. That is kind of the thing that sticks out to me about that. It's just tough because we don't really know. We don't know what Jalen Moss would have provided had he been healthy for these first 5 games. We don't know. We just know that he's been gone and that the offense has really missed a secondary receiver. So we'll see. I feel like for some reason, with Jalen Moss, we'll know his impact early, like within the first 2 drives of the game for ASU. So I think that if you just make it, the thing with Moss for me, now that I kind of talk it out, is I'm not expecting some huge game from him, but I think it is good that Utah can't quite focus all of its energy on Tyson the way they would have to if Jalen Moss were here. And the key thing about the Jaron Hamilton deep catch is Utah has to account for him on deep patterns. And we've seen that teams probably should have been doing that anyway, right? So maybe it's not a huge adjustment because, again, the Texas State game obviously didn't catch that pass from Levitt, but he was wide open running deep for what would have been a touchdown. So there's that. You have the Baylor game. He drew a huge PI at one of those points because he had beaten his man deep. Okay. So if Jaron Hamilton keeps showing that he can beat defenders deep, that's something Utah has to worry about. And that's something that it would be interesting to see if that becomes a big factor in this game as well. If there's a coverage bust or something, I doubt it'll be Tyson. I could see it being Hamilton being the guy who streams wide open if that happens. So I feel good. I feel like even though Utah's defense is tough and ASU's not going to score on every drive, they're probably not going to get to 30 points in this game. I do think that they figured some things out, and I think that they'll be able to have a competent offensive showing in this game. I really do. And I just don't know it's tough. I just don't really know what to make of Utah because they looked outstanding in their non-conference right? But, Cal Poly, whatever. Wyoming 31-6, big. That's a good one. And then the UCLA game was outstanding. That was a great win. But then we find out that like UCLA at that point in the season, right? Obviously they beat Penn State last weekend, but early on in the year, while they still had Deshaun Foster, I mean that team was just not good. They weren't trying the full extent that they could, and I mean they got beat by even worse to New Mexico, or so like I don't really know what to make of that week one, beat down over UCLA as it relates to Utah. They went on the road and beat West Virginia badly, and that is, it's still a road conference win. We saw West Virginia the Friday night of last week at BYU, and I don't know, they didn't look that great. I can see how. I mean, BYU had a huge lead over them the whole time, and it was one of those like they kind of scored some points at the end to make it not as embarrassing. But I don't know. So, I think that ASU is in a pretty good spot. The injuries aren't too bad, right? It's Xavier Alford who's out, and that sucks. Utah's not the most dynamic passing offense. It's just not. And I mean, Boogie Wilson has come in and done a really good job for Xavier Alford. He just has. And he's been around the ball. I mean, he's already had a pick. He's already had been on the fumble. He's made some big hits. Like you haven't noticed the drop off there, which is good. You'll also be out Zach Swanson. I'm not going to sit here and, detail interior line play on the defensive line. I think we have enough bodies there to absorb the loss of Zach Swanson. You're going to need him as the season goes along. He's a quality rotational defensive tackle. But I think if ASU loses this game, it won't be like, oh my gosh, we didn't have Zach Swanson. Like, no, like this team's pretty healthy heading into this game. So another thing. So I guess there's two things I want to mention. All right, where do I want to go with this? I guess I should talk about the ASU defense versus the Utah offense, right? Like, and then like Sam Levitt's probably going to get sacked a few times in this game. Like they have a good defensive line, but with Levitt, I mean, we've just seen it so many times, and we saw it against Texas last year. Like he can just avoid pressure at an unprecedented rate, and so there might be a few plays where it looks like he's going to get sacked, and then he doesn't get sacked, and maybe it's an incomplete pass, maybe it's completion, maybe he runs for 5 yards, whatever, but he can avoid pressure and limit some of those negative plays. And so I think that'll be a huge part of this game. And I mean, it would be great if he can avoid getting injured against Utah like he did last year. That game can really, like ASU was really moving the ball well. And they scored on that drive with Jeff Sims, but when Levitt was injured and the second half when he wasn't at full go, like the ASU offense really just was like, hey, we're just going to run Camp Scatteroo. And it worked. I mean, he had just best game of the year, 2 50-yard runs. It was awesome. That obviously they can't, rely on that again. I think that coming off a bye, Levitt will be as healthy as you would expect. And, I think he had some comments this week about like I was pressing early on in the year. The hype was all this stuff. Like it was just a lot. And I totally get that. And also you could 100% tell that he was pressing earlier in the year. I mean, the Mississippi State game, like that's, even some of the NAU game, you could see it a little bit in the Texas State game. And then it kind of flipped in the second half of Texas State. It's been better since then. So if we can get like a cool and comfortable Sam Levitt, I know the rain won't help, but I don't know if the rain will help Utah. Devin Dampier is from Phoenix, right? He's from Saguaro. Sam Levitt grew up in Oregon, has probably played many, many, many games in the rain. Someone who grew up in the Pacific Northwest. You're not going to avoid the rain. So with rain in the forecast for this game on Saturday, I think the average fan might think, oh, like that really is a detriment to ASU. And I can see how they would think that. But if you're, I mean, we've been practicing with the wet balls, if you've seen on social media. I think that Levitt, like the fact that he grew up in the Northwest, it's not, he may not like, not, that's not, he's not going to have like every throw is going to be on point, but I don't think he's going to be like intimidated by it or like make the rain out to be something more than it is type of deal. Like, I don't think that it'll be too detrimental to him. And, I don't know if it will be for Dampier either. Right. But he, I mean, I don't think he's thrown in the rain that much either. So that's something to keep an eye on for sure. As for the Utah offense, like they are pretty good, but that game against Texas Tech was really, it was eye-opening, and I've got that box score pulled up. Let me put it on the screen. Okay. This is a bad passing performance from Dampier against the Red Raiders. 25 of 38 for 162 and 2 ints. Terrible. They ran the ball for only 3.3 yards a carry. I don't think ASU is going to be able to limit Utah to like this level of ineptitude. But what I would say is like the blueprint was provided by Texas Tech. That's the key thing. So with, some things that they can learn from tape and the fact that this defense has already become kind of gelling as this season has gone along, right? I mean, giving up 24 points to Baylor and to TCU, I think those point total outings are going to age well as the season goes along. So I like if ASU can just continue to stop the run, like I think they've been good at that again this year. I mean, Baylor got some running yards on them for sure, but so we got points per game, yards allowed. Okay. So ASU is in sacks is, oh my gosh, this ESPN app, get out of here. Okay. This isn't obvious. This is more pass rush, but 19 sacks, and these teams ahead of them, Tennessee, Oklahoma, and I think it was UConn. Let's see here. Western Michigan. I believe all of those teams have played an additional game. So the pass rush has been good for ASU. I mean, especially after, you take down Hoover 6 times. But yards allowed, ASU isn't going to be that high. But I do want to see where they rank in rushing yards per game allowed. Look at that. ASU, top 10 in the country, 78.2, right? Now, Texas Tech is a whole 13 yards better per game. So that's why I said ASU can't just like replicate, that game that Texas Tech played against Utah. But they can take a lot of those concepts. And when ASU is the clear second best rush defense in the Big 12, like look at all these teams in this top 20-ish that's being shown on my screen. It's Texas Tech is number 2, and then you get Pittsburgh, Iowa, Oklahoma, Wisconsin, Michigan, Washington, ASU, Minnesota, James Madison, Texas, Georgia, LSU, App State, Miami, Auburn, Indiana, Memphis, Vandy, Ohio State, Toledo. Then you get to BYU at 92.2 yards per game. And BYU also clearly has a good defense. Arizona, there you go, 97.6. Good for them. But if that rush defense from ASU can hold up, and they don't have to hold Utah to 80 yards rushing, but if they hold them to like 110 on bad averages, that's going to really give ASU a head up in this game. And like if they can force Dampier to beat him throwing only, that might be the key to this game because our secondary is good. I think that's clear. Like Abney, if you've seen him, like Abney's being mocked as like a top half of the first round pick, not just like, oh, he might go like 27 overall or something. No, like he's like, oh, he could be a top 10 pick or a top 12 pick. Like he is really getting good draft buzz. Clayton Smith, obviously, I talked about the defensive line. Clayton Smith and Keyshawn Elliott both have 4 sacks. Dorbat has 3. You're getting pressure from a lot of different guys. I think it's notable that ASU's, big bad Utah, they only have 280 yards on the ground from Parker, and Rayleigh Brown has 506. Is Rayleigh Brown gonna, crush dudes heading into the goal line like Earl Campbell? No, he's not going to do that. But he can pick up yards. He can turn a, 15-yard run into a 20-yard run just because he has that extra juice. And so he is he's a big part of this game. I do think they need to involve Kanye Udo in this game as well. I think the fact that, look, you had the bye week, right? He's had time to digest more of the offense, become a bigger part of the game plan. I think that we need to see a good bit of Kanye Udo in this game. I think that he can really contribute. And, I think that they need to go to him closer to the goal line. And you don't do it. You don't do it every time, because then it just becomes like you're showing your hand. But you have to give him some opportunities in goal line play. So obviously, I mean, we know that that's going to be a huge point of emphasis for ASU into this game. So something to watch for. I'm also looking at the stats there. I mean, Jordan Crook has 40 tackles, and I think that Keyshawn Elliott has been better at linebacker this year, and that is not a slight to Jordan Crook. I think the ASU's linebackers have been incredible, both of them. And so they're going to have a huge game, right? Like if people are going to be tackling Devin Dampier in the open field, it's probably going to be Jordan Crook, and it's probably going to be Keyshawn Elliott for a lot of those assignments. So, I mean, him, Martell Hughes, we don't know. I don't know exactly what the deal is with Zyrus Fiaseu, but like some of this stuff we'll find out before the game. But they're gonna have to have a good game once again, and I think they're capable of it. So another thing that I kind of like going in for ASU in this game is Dillingham has been good off of buys in his 2 previous years at ASU. So the bye that they had a bye last year after the Texas Tech game, right? You go on the road, you lose to Texas Tech, tough loss. Then you go back and you host Kansas, and the defense kind of got shredded in that game. There's a few, weird kind of missed assignments that affected that. But offense had a fantastic game, left points on the board, and had a great come from behind fourth quarter drive to win the game in that one. The next bye they had was after the Cincinnati game, right? Remember, Levitt's injured. He gets more time to recover. They go to Oklahoma State, and they beat the tar off of the Cowboys. And they kind of wait through a lightning delay and come out in the second half and just really beat them down. So that's 2 last year, traditional bye weeks that helped ASU. One from previous year, 2023, the game at Washington. A lot of these guys were still on the team from that game at Washington. And that was really a game where you're like, oh, this still, like this might be for real, even though this team is not good. But when we're picking off Michael Penix 4 times in the game, completely shutting down this high-flying offense with McMillan didn't play in that game, but 2 like really high-profile NFL wide receivers, 2 offensive, right? Same with this game. Like you got Fano and Lomu on Utah at the tackles. Well, they had Troy Fautanu and Roger Rosengarten, and ASU still completely just shut down that offensive attack. And the only reason ASU lost was because of a pick 6 late in the game. There's another bye week I should probably find. I'm going to see if I can go back. But my point is, like, Dillingham has shown this team comes out of bye weeks and looks good. Okay. Where's the next 23-7? Okay, so you have the Washington. Maybe I don't know where the other bye week was in the 2023 season. So much of that season has been wiped from my brain. But maybe they just have one bye. They probably didn't have just one bye. I don't know why the schedule looks like that. There might be something I'm forgetting. But anyway, doesn't really matter. Oh, no. Yep, that was the bye. So my point is, like, Dillingham has shown that he can get a good result out of extra time with a bye week. And sometimes teams, like, that's not, I think that sometimes that's like, oh, you have extra time to prepare. Like, of course, like, well, a lot of times teams come out flat after a bye week. And I hope that, I mean, if ASU does that, then they're just going to lose this game. I don't think you can just come out, spot your opponent like 10 points and recover. I don't think that's going to happen. So they need to come out with the same like level of intensity as Utah. And, they need special teams needs to be on point. You can't have these missed kicks from sub 50 yards from Gomez. And I don't expect him to, but he was shaky last game. We need Canyon Floyd back. And I imagine that he'll be back for this game, but we're going to need him back. So we can't have the same type of punting performance that we had last week in this game. Maybe elevation will help. I don't know, but I don't want to deal with that. I just like if you're going to give Utah like a bunch of opportunities like at midfield, then it's going to be a rough night. So they need to do better in controlling field position against the Utes. I just think that's so clear. A few other things to bring up, like Utah, it has been a bad experience for ASU when they play Utah on the road in recent years. I've got Winsipedia pulled up, and so you're going to go. So ASU all time is great over Utah. But you look at some of these results. So, I mean, the ones at Salt Lake City, 55-3, that game was just a disaster. That was the Jacob Conover game. That game got away from ASU so early, and I think that was right after they had defeated Wazoo. So they were clearly, running off the high, winning your first conference game. Just got completely stuffed in a locker up in Salt Lake. And I'm kind of glad they got beat that badly because it helped them win. I believe it helped ASU win the game last year. And I think, if you're Dillingham, you can still go back to that this year and be like, hey, we got destroyed the last time we played these guys in Salt Lake City. So we need to be at our very best to make sure that doesn't happen because it can happen to this team. That's what you should say. You look at, oh, God, this game in 2021. We all remember this game. If you're an ASU fan, you remember this game. ASU's up 21-7 at half. Just completely folds in the second half. It's just a gross, terrible loss. They give up 28 unanswered and lose 35-21. 21-3. I'm sure Jaden Daniels still has nightmares about this game. Just it almost looked unsafe for him the way he was getting just like pinned to the ground in that game. That was a tough one in 2019. That was a decent ASU team too. And then you kind of get back into the Todd Graham era a little bit. ASU, I guess this was Herm Edwards, but they beat Utah 38-20. So the last time they beat, oh my gosh, 2017. It was 8 years ago. 30-10 in Salt Lake. It was a good win for Todd Graham, but that's a long time ago. to win a game in Salt Lake City for ASU. That's a problem. And so I think it can be done again. Like, if you look at all these other teams that lost at Utah in the meantime, right? Like 2019, like that was a 7-5 team. That was a decent team, but it wasn't that good. Like, and that Utah team was probably better than the Utah team we're playing this time. This game, I mean, sure, ASU went 8-4 that year, but they were just not a mentally strong team. And anytime they got pushed, they completely folded. So, this team is probably better than that team. I think we've seen enough that I think they are better than that team. 2 years ago, it was just a complete mismatch. ASU was terrible. Utah was decent, and they just kicked our ass. So, like, the history shows, like, it's a tough place to play. However, if you come up with, like, similar levels of talent, then Utah, it's only playing at Ohio State in the shoe or something, like it is. I mean, they've lost a bunch of games at home recently. I think, like, so that's another thing to worry about if you're ASU is, like, they will be motivated. Like, they are motivated to end this losing streak at home. It's a night game. Like, that doesn't mean it's all going to, like, go their way, but, like, they will have some real motivation beyond just, like, conference standings, like they want to get back at us, and they have the home field advantage. I mean, they should have a weather. Like, they have a good team too. Like, I don't expect ASU to just completely shut down Utah, but I think that they're just a little more. I think this game is a little more doable for ASU winning than it was before the season began. That's what I would say. I think that like ASU is capable of winning this game, and I think ASU is going to win. Honestly, I think ASU wins 24-20. I think this is a defense. I think this is a game where the defense really flexes its muscles, and you can. I just, after what I saw in the second half against TCU, I think this defense can really, like, when they're all playing together, when they're all running free in Brian Ward's scheme, and they know their assignments and they know what they need to do. Like, they have the guys to generate pressure. I mean, like, you have, like, Clinton Smith has a good chance to finish with, like, double-digit sacks this year. Dorba, if you can are capable of 3 sacks in a game and a sack fumble, you're doing something right. You've got good linebackers that can pressure. We know that there's a chance that some of the secondary members might be rushing the passer as well. So all this is to say, like, this is a tough place to play. They are absolutely going to be geared up on a late night. There's going to be some rain. Your underdogs. They've tasted their own blood before this year, right, with the Texas Tech loss. They have a lot to play for. I think that Leavitt is a little better than Dampier. Tyson is a better offensive player than anyone that they have, or at least in terms of, like, an offensive playmaker, than anyone that they have on their team. And so he can be a difference maker. And I think the defense is just in a really good spot. And if you're ASU and you're allowing 78 yards rushing per game, like, I think that there's an opportunity to really play well in that aspect of the game there. So it's going to be a fun game. I will be on the East Coast for a friend's wedding, and so the game's going to start at 10:15. I'm not. That's going to be an interesting night, but you know what? Whatever. It is what it is, and it's still a great opportunity for ASU. So they come in fairly healthy. Looks like some of the offensive stuff has been figured out, not all of it. And I do trust Dillingham operating off a bye. I do. So, that'll be it. Not going to touch too much on ASU hockey. Kind of a disappointing results in their 2 games against Penn State, but also a good showing overall and all that. And it was great to see Joey DeCord's number get retired. So, there's that on hockey. And, Yeah, all right. That's going to wrap this one up. Please like and subscribe, rate and review. And as always, go Sun Devils. Forks up.